Is that a yes or a no?
Yes,
She's-
Erica, she's,
She's there, but she's
muted, yes.
she's got a,
Okay,
there we go.
all right, as long as she can hear us.
I'm
Okay,
present.
okay, that's good. Okay, welcome to the January 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. Just to let you know, I'm Hilliard Bosky, I'm on the board here. This is a hybrid meeting, meaning someone could watch this at home on Zoom, however they normally get into the live meetings. So, let's go to attendance. Actually, we know Mary for sure is there. Mary, just raise your hand, okay, and you're present. Fine. Deborah?
I'm present.
Present. Charlie?
Present.
And I'm present, obviously, as well. Okay, public comment is the first item on the agenda. Just so everyone knows. Bruce?
yes. I have one public comment, question for public comment.
Yeah, okay.
I'd
So
I'd-
do I, but
I'd like to,
okay.
I'd
Go
like
ahead.
to bring Kevin Hooker, our housing inspector, up.
Oh, great. Welcome, Kevin. Thanks for coming in.
The board has been filling in. Kevin's been with us before on some other housing complaints over the past few years, but Kevin's been with the department for 6.5 years, and he is now taking a new job as a director of facility management off Cape. So he's going to be sorely missed. He's really brought the department up a whole notch, or 2 notches, 3 notches, as high as you can go since he's been here in 6.5 years. Especially over the last year and a half with Erica coming on board also in the housing program, that they've both raised it way to a high level. And I just want to publicly acknowledge him and all the hard work he's done to the board and to the public over the last 6.5 years.
Indeed, I've learned a lot from you. I'm sure the other board members and probably the health department as well. Yeah, it's gonna be tough finding someone. Not that most of us could be replaced, but yeah, it's gonna be difficult. You've been really productive and really providing a lot of information.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. It's been a
Good
great,
luck to you, Kevin.
it's been a great 6.5 years. I've enjoyed every bit of it.
I mean, the volumes of work has just grown and grown and grown.
You're left in good hands. You have a good inspector who's taken over, so. Probably should have had him stay. But Kevin worked on all the data along with Erica the last 3 years we've been putting in for the second housing inspector with a lot of the data and the complaints that we have to follow, and almost 4,000 rentals that we track throughout the town, especially with the new short-term rentals now that the state has. So with the data that he has put together, we've been able to hire a second inspector that started in September. So we've had a little training period, so Kevin's, got him on board, so that's terrific.
Erica is definitely our key. She's made our program the success that it is today.
I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank
It's
you.
exciting.
You'll be
Good for
missed.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You got
Sure.
two more weeks to work
2
with
more
us?
weeks. 2 more weeks.
If we're counting, it's, 9 days now.
That's right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you much.
Okay. Just so everyone knows, there's some time restrictions tonight. There's another meeting coming in, so we're going to try to do this, or I'm going to try to do this as efficiently as I can. First item here, continuation of the public comment. What I'd ask for, if there's public that wants to bring something to the attention of the board, for things that are not on the agenda, which is the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. So if anyone in the public would like to speak up, have comments on something that's not on the agenda, someone could be calling in, Zooming, or someone right here. Bruce?
Yes, I think that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman. I think the people that a majority are here want to probably comment on the next hearing on the Haas request, and I believe you're going to allow them to speak at that time.
Correct.
Okay.
We're not there quite yet. The second item is a public hearing. Assuming was anybody calling in at all, or Zooming in here with questions or comments, anything?
I don't see anybody with a hand up willing to,
No.
requesting to speak.
Okay. Okay, so this is a public hearing, body piercing regulation, and under that, it's saying draft regulation. Bruce, just want to bring us up to date where we're at? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, the board has had a couple meetings to discuss the body piercing regulations that the town has. There was an old regulation on the books from years ago, so the board looked at updating it. The regulation was, body piercing regulation was very well put together, but it needed a few some changes and some modifications, which has been done. We have not received any comments either to me at all, either by phone call or texting or mail, so we haven't had any comments on the regulation. So I know the board members have had a couple small edits themselves. I know Mary looked at it, yourself, Hillard. There was some small wording changes and drafting set up that Erica worked on or will finish working on as we go forward. So right now, if there's, I guess the question is there anybody in the public that would like to comment on the body piercing? And then if not, the board can just go over their edits, then you could close the hearing and then move forward to vote on the regulation.
That sounds good. I'd just like to thank your department. It's been a lot of work, a lot of details. We condensed it from 800 pages or whatever we did. We met a lot, and so.
A lot of work. Jay worked together on it quite a bit with you back and forth and Mary, and then Erica was the one that put a lot in, and then plus the person that's going to be opening up the tattoo body piercing, Sheriff Mark Colaris, put a lot of work into it as suggestions for the board also.
Yeah, that's been really helpful.
Yes.
Anything you wanted to say just to open this up?
I would just thank you for having me, and thank you, the board and Bruce and Jay and everyone involved. I know it's been an extraordinary amount of work for you guys, and I'd just like to thank you for that and thank you for the opportunity. It's been very nice dealing with you guys.
It's been exciting. Just you got a new business here, and it's been a pleasure working with you. So, board members, I'm sure everyone's gone through their packet, including the regulations. Any questions about it, edits, anything?
So the only question I had was on page 8, the bottom, section 3, part B, sterilization bags with color strip indicator. What indicating what?
This is spore testing. You want to just say how your, it goes?
Basically a sterilizer pouch for it to actually work properly and to let us know that it's sterilized the instrument. It has to change color.
Okay.
So
And
it
are
would-
they all the same? Like it goes from red to green?
Most of the time it goes from like a clear pinkish color to a brown. And that just indicates that it worked properly.
Mary, Charlie?
I've read through this and I don't see anything wrong with it, so.
Okay.
I think Mary nodded her head that she was all set.
I'm fine with it, yes.
Good.
Erica, I went look at it again.
Go with it.
I guess probably Jay, take a look at, or everyone, page 4 of 18. The bottom of the page, under body piercing technician registration, number 1, the second line, it says body piercer unless the person holds a license. Should that be an active license? Anybody can comment on that?
I think it's fine. Sorry, active.
Okay, to add that, Jay, Bruce,
Add the word active.
Sure.
it's okay, all right.
Fine.
Okay.
Says thumbs up.
Mary says thumbs up, okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. That's really the only one I need to mention, I think is fine, so that's good. So anyone from the public, here's a chance to also speak. Comments about what we're doing here with these regulations and having the business opening up. Anyone? Okay, then the hearing is closed, and we're on to the third item here, and that's, we're going to vote on these regulations. So what I would need would be a motion in order to move forward on the regulations.
I move we approve the rules and regulations governing the practice of body piercing.
With one amendment of act
One amendment from adding the word active,
license, correct.
active license on page 4.
Well stated, thank you, Deborah. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that's Charlie the second. Okay, any further discussion? Hopefully not, and let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, including Mary, you need to raise your hand only because you're zooming in there. All in favor, say aye. That's aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous, that's done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're off and running here,
Thank you
okay.
very much.
I've driven by a bunch of times. It looks awesome.
Thank you. We're there.
Were they there like 24/7?
Yeah, we sleep there.
No matter what time
My
I
kids
drive by.
haven't seen me in months.
They've been working around the clock for sure.
No matter what time I drive by.
What we do now is, it has to be published in the paper once that we've finalized it, and we'll get that in the paper by the end of the week. Then it has to run the paper, then it becomes active. So you probably still have 3 or 4 days for the body part to piercing to go forward. We're looking for the cost of it. We believe we had the same fee as tattooing. We're looking at that versus holding a separate hearing on the fee license, so we're trying to finalize that this week, but that. But for the tattoo shop, which the body piercing will be located at, I just want to give an update of what the shop is for the people at home or here. It's on the Barnstable-Yarmouth town line next to the miniature golf course and King's Coffee Shop. This is inside. This shows the red in the middle, the syringe box. We have the new hand washing stations and then paper towels and that. And the hand washing station has a foot pedal on it. Inside, you can see how open it is. That's the new look in the tattoo shops. You can see the new floor that was just put in and how shiny that is. I've inspected this today. I would say I gave it the white glove inspection, which I did wipe everything, and everything looked terrific. The little shots, photos above all these workstations that are on coasters, they're almost like a automotive toolbox that they pull out, that they have all their stuff. But I even got a little pointer here. All these ones up top. Do you want to just say what these tattoo diagram represent?
Bruce, it's like a collection of art from one of the kind of founding fathers of tattooing in the United States, Sailor Jerry. He's since passed on, but we're kind of bringing back the tradition of the original style of tattooing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. We're trying to get away from the iPads and the iPhones and show the public kind of the history of tattooing and how technology might have pushed this away, but it's always still been there.
It's kind of neat looking at the history of the grandfather of tattooing, the first person. It's some great tattoos there. This is another area to the side where Mark and somebody else will be doing tattooing. You can see how bright and colorful it is. There's a divider there if needed, and there's also 2 separate rooms should further tattooing be needed, and especially the other rooms that breast cancer and doing nipple replacement or tattooing that you work with the hospital and a couple doctors on, and people book for that. So that's in a different location. The waiting room when you come in is a waiting room. It's all by appointment. It's really not, as I understand, not too many people walk in, that everybody's pretty well booked up for your artist work. But you can see on the wall, it's tough to see. When you drive by, you can probably see it's a sloped wall with a lot of tattoo work they've done. But then on top, up here, it goes around here. This is all Japanese artwork, I would say.
Yes, Bruce. That's what I specialize in, is traditional Japanese, so it's all
So there's
prints from there.
different types of tattooing, Japanese tattooing, black and white tattooing, and so forth. So the shop, you can just see how bright and clean and cheery it is. Cheery? Is that a good word?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Here's another area that faces the restaurant to the side that they also operate. And you can see also other tattooing here. The full walls are pretty much artist's work that they've done. I know our regulation says they have to post artist work and the business license, which they can do, and I didn't show the front desk, so they can publish, they can post where the license that will be granted to them. But as Jay and I were discussing, if we're going to be posting 15, 20, 30 artist license that come in, there's really not a spot on the wall. So what we were going to recommend and let the board know is we'd put them in they could put them in a binder and leave the binder on the front desk to say these are the active tattooists. There would be a space on the wall further down, but it's covered up by all the artist work. This is the last shot looking at the other direction. There are two hand wash stations that we asked about to put in. So here's one there, and there's one down further, and there's a red shop box in front of each water station, and I believe there's one in the room that I showed separately that where you work, Mark. There's one there also. You are looking at a separate room that I didn't take all pictures of. The pet piercing room is to the side, and you're looking at another room that's a machine that takes off or modifies tattoos to be redone, that you're looking at doing that in a separate room. So that's all I have. I just wanted to show the board. I believe you're going to have an open house at some point in time for public to look at.
Yes, we'd like to, I believe in March, once we, get our protocol and everything figured out and everything comfortable and people working and, the bugs out, so to say.
Just wanted to show you how open it is. I know a couple of you have been to the Hyannis Spilt Milk Studio, so you can see quite a difference in the new trend in tattooing and body
A
piercing.
little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much.
We'll work on
Appreciate
that
everyone's
tomorrow
time.
with you on your applications. Yeah, you leaving a copy, or you making a whole copy?
I can leave anything you like.
Jay?
That'd be terrific. I'll
Perfect.
take them, Mark.
Easy.
You bet. We'll talk tomorrow.
Great night.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for all your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay, the fourth item, as we're trying to move along here, and this is,
There we go. 6:45 was the next hearing time.
yeah,
Good.
okay? Right, so, once again, this is the hearing for 414 Route 6A in Yarmouthport. And this is a request for a horse stable permit, variances from Board of Health, stable regulation. And it's up for a vote. There've been some issues in the past just about an application being incomplete. Bruce or Jay, do we have a complete application? Let's start with that.
Yes, we do have a plan in the file from a registered land surveyor that the board has, which is up on the meeting, that shows possible locations of the stable corral area and the distances that could be made and the variances that are being requested.
Fine, okay, so the application is complete, because that was one of the big issues we had.
Correct.
Fine, now, any members of the public, anyone would like to come forward, this is your opportunity. Mic is open, and we'd like to hear from you.
Just state name and address. Are you representing?
Sorry, is the applicant going to make a presentation first, or do you want to go right to the public?
I'm asking for comments first. Great, thank you.
Right, well, I'm Attorney David Reed, and I represent three of the,
Mic a little bit.
I represent three of the households surrounding this property. Just a second, let me. John and Lisa Grady of 415 Route 6A, which is directly across the street from the barn. Sandra Kufel, which is 418 Route 6A, which is the immediate butter to the east or to the right, and the closest and most affected by the variance requests. And Mr. Joel Chasen of 404 Route 6A, which is the house to the west of the corral. So so three of the surrounding property owners. I'd first like to suggest to you that there are several discrepancies with this plan. And I don't think it's accurate, and I think there's some matters that need to be clarified and corrected for you. First of all, it shows to the north or northeast that the house there is number 21 Center Street. That's not correct. The house at that location is number 15 Elmcroft, and that's significant because the town records indicate that the house at number 15 Elmcroft was built only 22 feet from its rear boundary line. So I would suggest that it is within 100 feet of the corral, and therefore it should have been mentioned on this plan and should have been one of the requested variances.
I'm gonna ask a question, even though you're up there presenting something. It'll be helpful. You mentioned 100 feet.
Yes.
From what 2 points, that to make sure the board understands that you're referring to?
Yes, your regulations require that the stable, paddock, and corral all be located at least 50 feet from a boundary line of the property and 100 feet from any residential structure, whether either on or off the property, I believe, is my interpretation of it. And so I believe the requested variances here should have included to the house to the north, which I believe is within 100 feet. I can give you the plot plan on that house if you don't have it already. And it shows the other distances to the house on this property and to the house immediately to the east, which is Mrs. Kufel's house, all of which are less than either the 50 feet from the boundary line or 100 feet from the residence. So there are approximately 6 variances that they've requested before you tonight, or should have requested before you tonight. I would also suggest to you that the measurements used by the engineer are really not accurate either. If you can read the plan, the dotted lines being the proposed variance distances show the distance, for example, from Ms. Kufel's house to the stall within the stable where the horse would reside. The regulations require that the stable itself be 50 feet from the boundary line and 100 feet from the abutting residential properties. And I would suggest that the stable is the building. The stall is one section within the building. So that in fact, these distances don't show the correct measurement from the stable to either the property line or the house. The previous plan that was presented to you at the last hearing showed that the building, the stable itself, is only 14 feet from the easterly boundary line. Therefore, the variance requests are significantly greater than are shown on this plan, because the measurements were not made from the corners of the building, but just from the stall within the building. And I don't believe that's what your regulations require. I see nothing in the actual application about their intentions for handling of manure, which, as you may recall, was the original complaint that brought this to the attention of Mr. Murphy and the department. Your regulations require that the manure be handled in a watertight container, that the soiled hay and manure be removed from the stalls at least every 48 hours, and that the manure be removed from the site at least every week, at least once a week, depending on the volume. I don't see any details of that in their application, and I assume you will inquire of them as to how they intend to handle the manure from these 2 horses that were expected to be returned to the property. Lastly, in terms of the relief, your regulation, section 202-3F, as in Frank, require that the paddock and corral be located and constructed and maintained so that water does not pool within the area where the horses will be. My client, Mr. Grady, sent to you, I think on January 19th, a photograph taken that day of the fact that it rained and that there was a substantial pool of water throughout most, if not all, of the paddock area, and that happens on a regular basis every time there is any significant rainfall.
I think this is a picture that was submitted as part of your...
And I think he has perhaps more recent pictures. That's the one that I was referring to there. So there is substantial standing water in the paddock area, and is on a regular basis. And that's not new. That was contended by us and by photographs and evidence last time we were before you, when this matter was here last year. So it's not an isolated occurrence. I would also suggest, and the reason for our carefully reviewing the application and presentation, is that I really think there's a significant credibility gap in terms of this situation. How can we trust the applicant to abide by your regulations or any decision you may make with the circumstances that bring them here tonight? As you will recall, Mr. Murphy met with them before they brought any horses or did any work at this property, and told them the regulations that applied and what they needed to do. They nevertheless purchased the property and moved in and moved the horses in without even applying to you for this permit. That was 2 years ago. Once that discrepancy was brought to Mr. Murphy's attention. It took them almost 2 years to get in here to actually apply. Year and a half, 2 years before your actual hearing. At which time they didn't even attend the final hearing, and you voted to order the horses to be removed. They also, incidentally, have never applied for building permits for the work done there, and have been cited twice by the Old Kings Highway Committee for having done all this work without having gotten approval for them, right on Route 6A. Not that those are in your jurisdiction, but those are the circumstances that leave them here today. After you ordered the horses removed, they ignored your order. The town had to go to court to get an injunction to have the horses removed from the property. When that order was issued in July, they sought to delay that again and got another stay from the court for another 30 days, another 60 days, actually, by the time the motion was acted on. So it took them 4 months from the time you ordered the horses removed to actually remove them from the property. For the last almost 3 years, this neighborhood has been dealing with this situation and has been frustrated by their inabilities to get compliance with your public health regulations for this site. And now, with this background, the applicants are before you asking for variances from the very regulations that Mr. Murphy brought to their attention before they even moved in. If there is any hardship to them that necessitates your consideration of these variances, I would suggest that it's entirely their own making. They knew what the regulations were before they set up the corral, paddock, and brought the horses in. They knew because Mr. Murphy met with them and told them what the regulations were. They chose to ignore that. I know that Mr. Hallway, for one, loves horses and thinks it would be appropriate for anybody to have a horse on their property as long as they know how to care for them. And I respect that. But that's his personal opinion. And what you're here for tonight is not to decide whether you like horses or corrals, but whether your public health regulations are to be enforced or are to be waived. In order for you to grant a variance from your own regulations, you're required to find that the intent of your regulations would still be carried out, even with the variances you grant. Your Section 202-14 is your discussion of variances in your regulations, and it mentions the state standard as well. The state standard is whether or not manifest injustice would result from the literal enforcement of the regulations in this case. I would suggest again that the injustice is first and foremost to your department for having been ignored for now almost 3 years, and secondarily to the neighbors who have been offended and ignored and frustrated by your inability to secure compliance with this applicant. And lastly, I suggest that to grant these variances at this time, under these circumstances, does nothing but reward their attempt to ignore and evade your regulations. That's not the precedent, that's not the message that I think you want to send to the public or to these neighbors. So we would ask you to deny these variances, and because you cannot grant the permit without the variances, to deny the stable permit request as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
My name is John Grady, and I live at 415 Route 6A, directly across the street from the applicants. And I have some remarks I'd like to make, many of which my attorney has already made, so I'll try and skip through those portions. But there are some exhibits that you have, and also I have another one that did not get to you because it wasn't brought in on time. So I'd like to just hand that to everybody. Bruce? This?
Okay, thank you.
I think the What's
Clear,
Mr.
the
what's Mr.
board did not have, just
This-
make
thi-
sure for the public to be.
Yeah, and I did,
It's up there.
yes, John, I did respond, well, like, you can get back to the microphone so I can respond to you, but this was emailed to us today by Mr. Grady, and it's not in the packet that went out on Friday. So it's really, the board can't really consider things at the meeting because the public has not been able to look at it 48 hours in advance. But basically, it's just showing an area that we had the original plan from the land surveyor. It's just highlighting an area, if you looked at where area that would meet 50 feet off the property line, so it leaves like about a 12-foot strip that leads to the new located paddock in the back. So if you had, right here, if you measured in 50 feet from one property line, 50 feet from the other property line, it leaves like about a 12-foot strip that would lead back to the new paddock in the back. Really can't consider it because it's at the meeting coming in now, but it's just kind of going over what's submitted earlier.
So you can't really share with us the significance of this?
Correct. I mean, the public hasn't had a chance. All the documents have to come in prior to the meeting.
Okay. All right, sir.
But it does show the 50 feet off the property lines and that where something could go to be 50 feet off the property lines to meet a regulation.
Okay.
If I may, what it does is it superimposes the 50-foot setback lines on that plan so that you can see where the area is where stables and corrals are allowed under the bylaw. And on that plan, when you do that, you can see that the stable building and most of the corrals are outside of the allowable area. That's the intent of this.
Okay.
Are we through with that one, Bruce?
Yes.
I have a letter here, which is not from me. It's from all of the abutters to the subject property. And those are myself and my wife, John and Lisa Grady at 415 6A, Joel Chazon at 404 6A, Ann Iarati and Judith Recknagel at 408 6A, Sandra Kufel and Thomas McLeod at 418 6A, Elaine Connolly at 19 Elmcroft Drive, and Michael and Susan Dubinsky at 15 Elmcroft Drive, and Michael Kalis, owner of 411 Route 6A. Mr. and Mrs. Dubinsky are new here. They purchased the home that was formerly owned by Fred and Carolyn at 15 Elmcroft, who were in here at previous hearings. And they both spoke at previous hearings. Michael and his wife purchased this at a time when the horses were gone, and they believed that the horses were gone and would not be back. And they are obviously opposed to this application. I'm going to read the letter from all the abutters. Dear members, we oppose the issuance of a stable license at 414 6A. The site plan submitted confirms the stable and corrals do not comply with setback requirements. Any variances to allow a permit will not be in the public interest, will detract from the character of the area, impede quiet enjoyment of abutting properties, and drive property values down. Any hardship experienced by the applicants is self-inflicted, as there is no requirement to keep horses. Returning the horses will renew odors of manure in yard and other hardships previously experienced by abutters. Respectfully, the abutters who I previously named.
We can take that for the record.
That I sent, did you get that?
Yes, that was in the packet.
The one in the packet,
yeah.
yes. The
Yeah,
board
we-
has that on Friday, yes.
It was misidentified as coming from me, actually.
Yes,
It's from
that's
all
fine.
the abutters.
Thank you.
I have some remarks which are very similar to what David Reed previously said, but I'll just skim through them quickly. The site plan confirms that the stable and corrals do not comply, and I brought sent the exhibit in, which we talked about previously. It incorrectly identifies abutters and omits setbacks from 2 homes on Elmcroft Way. Wetland setback is not indicated. There is an area on this property at the western side which appears to be, visually, to be a wetland. It's not indicated to be as such on any map, but if a botanist were to go in there and flag it, they very well might flag it as a wetland. The septic system on this property is not located on the survey plan. It turns out that the septic system is very near the area where the paddocks are currently located and where the new ones are proposed to be located. The typical septic system on a residential home will take in about a gallon a day of urine. And it gets processed and goes into the water table eventually after treatment. 2 horses will put out 4 gallons a day of untreated urine, which in this site will go directly into the water table. There's no place for it to go to. It's the low point on the property. Water goes in there and stays there. There's no place no way for it to get out. The setbacks are incorrectly indicated as from the stable, as from the stalls rather than the stable. And in the diagram of the stable itself, there's no indication of where the feed and hay storage areas are. Manure storage is an issue. The application says something about a trailer. Well, that doesn't sound like a ventilated water-tight facility. Slope and drainage in the paddocks is not indicated in the plan, as it has no contours. The town of Yarmouth has provided a contour map of the property, which I believe you have in your package. And on that, you can see it's highlighted showing that the area where the paddocks are proposed to be and the stable itself are within the low point on the property, elevation 30 feet above sea level.
This was this is the one you
This
put
is
in
the
the
one,
property?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's obvious that, although I've never been in the barn, it's obvious that seeing horses in there, something's been done to build out stalls for them. There's no record of any building permits on the town or any detailed specifications for how this work was done. In terms in general on variances, our position is that they're not justified, as keeping horses is voluntary. It's not required. Variances are often given to assist someone who is trying to conform with a zoning or other town bylaw issue, and they are having difficulty because of the circumstances of the site. That's not the case here. This has nothing to do with the circumstances of the site, other than it's not big enough for them to meet the setback requirements in the bylaw. You have the authority to grant variances, but subject to standards in the bylaw and general law, and provided wetlands, abutters, and the public are protected from nuisances. So our feeling is that granting these variances will not protect us. It will in fact enable them to reoccur. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Great. Just come up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
My name is Larry Venetia. I'm not an abutter, but our home is located adjacent to 2 abutters, and we can clearly see the property being discussed from our 2nd floor. I, like Charlie, am a horse lover and have no objection to having horses as neighbors. But I'd like to offer my opinion on the suitability of this property for a stable permit from a equine humane perspective. I'm a licensed veterinarian with extensive equine and medical husbandry experience. Had a practice on the Cape since I graduated from veterinary school. Had an active horse practice up till about 20 years ago. I've daily observed the 2 horses on this property during their 2+ years in residence at this location. During that period, I feel the husbandry for these horses has been suboptimal. From a distance, the horses appear well-nourished and in good body condition. Their shelter needs appear adequate. I make no assertions at all with regard to zoning or setbacks or anything else. I'm up here strictly from the perspective of the horse's point of view. The horse evolved over more than a millennium as an open-range grazing herbivore that has been well domesticated over the centuries to be a working animal. It is happiest if it has a job or allowed to open field graze. It remains emotionally and physically healthy if able to regularly exercise, open field graze, and has a job to do. In my opinion, none of these functions are possible on this property. To substantiate my opinion, none of these activities were observed by me during the horse's tenure on the property. The existing paddocks are a size that preclude grazing and reasonable exercise. The footing appears to be native sand, clay, and residual organic matter, making it less than conducive to proper drainage and will not remain stable if any sort of exercise is undertaken, including riding in a constrictive circle or working a horse on a lunge line, which is really the only way you could exercise these horses on this property. The paddocks and stable area appear to flood after any appreciable rain. The horses will need to be trailered off the property for exercise under existing conditions. This wasn't observed to occur during the horse's residence on the property. Riding the horses from the property to an area for exercise is not feasible due to traffic constraints. For adequate sustained exercise, the existing enclosure should be considerably enlarged and the footing professionally upgraded to a defined combination of sand, clay, and peat. There are some manufactured substrates that are available. Even if this occurred, it will be problematic to manage the footing on such a confined area due to heavy wear and tear in a confined space. I have no firsthand knowledge of the day-to-day care of these horses. If a permit were to be considered, in my opinion, it should include stipulations that address the minimum criteria for housing horses in a densely populated, residential, and high-traffic area, including absolute requirements for fencing that would prevent horses escaping off the property. This would be for the horse's own safety. The property fronts a very busy road. Presently, the fencing appears really totally inadequate, and you can see those pictures there. Homemade fences that pretty much any board horse eventually is going to push through, especially where there's no real grazing there, where they can nibble and browse. And you see that grass area adjacent to the paddock. The next thing you know, the horse's head's going to come through there. He's got tremendous strength. He's going to pop those rails off pretty easily, and before you know it, he'll be out of the paddock. Anyway, for adequate sustain, in summary, based on my observations regarding the housing practices of these horses over the past 2 years, I'm in opposition to the granting of a stable permit for this property under present conditions. I'd like to make it clear that my comments are not to be construed as being directed to anyone personally, but only directed toward the welfare of the horses involved. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
What address did you say you were at?
I'm next to the Connollys.
What, street
on
number?
23 Elmcroft Way.
23, okay.
Yeah. So we're adjacent to 2 abutters. Actually, we pretty much have that view from our upstairs, our second floor.
Board members, any questions? It's an unusual opportunity. We have a veterinarian here. Okay, thank you for coming in. So, anyone else from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Judith Recknagel. I am speaking for Ann Iarati, and we are at 408 Route 6A. And just to give some personal comments, we object to the granting of variances for a horse stable at 414 Route 6A. The size and shape of the lot does not accommodate the setbacks. And there are long hours of noise and power tools and hammering and tractor engines. We cannot have the use of our patio and backyard due to the close proximity of the property, and we ask that the variances not be granted. And I'm also going to read a statement for our neighbor, Joel Chasen, who was unable to be here, and he's at 404 Route 6A. So reading for Mr. Joel Chasen. I respectfully write in opposition to the request by the residents of 414 Route 6A to house horses in the converted garage at their residence. Although my home is 2 houses away, I am affected by the presence of odors of urine and manure coming from the property. This has always been a residential neighborhood of well-maintained homes and neighbors who respect one another. We like to socialize in each other's backyards, grill outside in summer weather, and look after one another in this peaceful neighborhood of Old Kings Highway. I object to the variances as requested by the applicants as well, since they would provide a hardship for the residents of 418, whose kitchen window looks out onto the manure pile next door. Despite efforts by the owner of 414 to dispose of the manure in the past, there have always been issues of odors and flies at the site. Walkers passing by the house often comment about the smells. I urge the Board of Health to deny the request for variances in order to bring back the 2 horses to this residential neighborhood. Yours sincerely, Joel Chasen. Thank you.
Excuse me a second, I may have missed it. What property do you live at?
I live at 408.
Okay, great, thank you.
My name is Sandra Kufal. I'm at 418, one of the closest abutters. I object to the variance application from 414. When buying property and knowing you want to keep horses on that property, it's your responsibility to understand the zoning laws of the area before you buy. Zoning preserves existing properties and structures and also protects against incompatible land use. Personal circumstances are not a basis for a variance. Owning a horse is a luxury and not a necessity created by the applicants themselves. This variance will alter the neighborhood character. It would impair the appropriate use of adjacent properties as well as affect the neighborhood property values. The property in question can't support horses, their care, noise, odors, dust, manure storage, insects, standing water after rain or snow, heavy equipment moving manure, just to name a few. Having horses so close to neighbors requires space, vegetation, and should have buffers, which the land isn't large enough to have. I moved to 418 in 2004, enjoying a quiet neighborhood with friendly neighbors who cared and respected each other. For the last few years, because of the location of my house, which is quite close to them, I no longer feel comfortable using my kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, patio, grills, or enjoy my gardens. I can't open my windows to get fresh air due to the offensive odors from the manure, which was not handled properly or respectfully from the beginning. Now, what the variance says is to bring the paddock even closer to my house. Fairness to a community and neighbors is important. We all want peace, quiet, and fresh air to breathe. Special privileges cannot be given to just one property, leaving everyone else to bear the hardship. And did you want a copy of that at all, or?
You can leave it with Bruce. Sure, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Christine Marzigliano. I'm not an abutter, but I'm a past president of the Historical Society of Old Yarmouth, and I sit on the Yarmouth Conservation Trust. I don't know if the people, I have 2 points. One, the property's too small to properly exercise horses. My cousins have horses in Florida. They sit on 10-acre zoning, 1 acre for the house, 9 acres for the exercise of the horses. Second, there are no horseback riding trails in Yarmouth. I don't know if they intend to ever take the horses off property. The Historical Society walking, hiking trails are off limits to horses, and the conservation properties throughout the north side all have conservation restrictions on them, and there is no horseback riding, only hiking trails. I wish the people to enjoy their horses. There's a facility right in Dennis where you can board horses and go over there. It's a 10-acre facility, and that's the proper place for the horses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
These things. There, I'm Lisa Grady. I'm at 415 Route 6A. Only 2 things have changed since we first met in March of 2022. The horses are gone, and the stench of the horse urine and manure is gone. What we now have in front of us is a land survey that shows exactly what we have been saying to the board for 2 years, that this property never has and never will meet the setback requirements for a stable permit. But the stench that's been produced from this property in the past is not contained by setbacks and variances. We are on small village lots, on historic Route 6A, where windows and doors could not be open, where property owners could not even enjoy their outdoor spaces. When the wind blew out of the north, the stench hung in pockets down on Clark Road over 200 feet away. When the wind blew out of the south, abutters and others as far down as the corner of Winter and Center Street were affected. For the abutters to either side, it was daily. During site visits, the owners were found to have kept manure out in the open. At one point, there was a pile that had been photographed that reached at least 6 feet. During his last visit to the property after Barnstable Superior Court ordered the owners to remove manure daily from the property, Jay Gardner found that they had been burying manure. All eyes were upon them, and this was doing their best. Setbacks matter. The stable law requirements are there for the health, safety, and protection of all, and responsibility matters. This issue is now going on its 3rd year. For 2 years, while knowingly in violation and in the midst of constant complaints from abutters, the owners ignored Bruce Murphy's attempts to get them to apply for a permit. When they finally did in March of 2022, it was incomplete. As Town Council stated in their preliminary injunction, even if their initial application had been complete, it likely would have been denied in any event due to the dimensions of the property, the location of existing outbuildings in their yard, as well as the location of neighbors' homes. In May of last year, when the Board of Health ordered the horses to be removed, the owners still ignored you. It took having to incur the cost and time of Town Council to file an injunction with the Barnstable Superior Court to enforce the order. In September, 4 months later, the owners finally complied with the injunction. They waited until the day before the Superior Court would have found them in contempt to have their horses trailered away. For the years that we held our noses, these owners continued to thumb their noses at you, the court, the Old Kings Highway Commission, who has also served them notice of violations, including the fences erected that were never received approval for. As Town Council noted to Barnstable Superior Court, These owners have repeatedly demonstrated that they aren't interested in or bound by any town regulations, requirements, or procedures. In closing, I will again quote from Town Council's injunction. The residents of the town of Yarmouth certainly have an interest in having their municipal officials enforce the town's health regulations and to ensure that the town's character is maintained and protected against those who pursue their own interests over the town's. There is obviously also a public interest in ensuring that residents in town do not engage in any activity that poses a risk to the health and safety of the public or drives property values down, as the defendants are currently doing. Variances are typically granted to mitigate a legitimate hardship. The only hardship here is what abutters have experienced for years and will experience again if these horses are allowed to return. All 7 abutters have once again objected in writing to this application, and we ask that you vote tonight to deny it. This has gone on for far too long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, my first question earlier, Bruce, Jay, was, is this application complete? Just listening, does the survey meet the requirements for the application? That's key right now. We've been here before where application has not been complete. Question right now, is it complete or not, before we even proceed with this?
The application is complete with a couple of comments, I would say. One being, you have the land surveyor plan in front of you that does show the variances requested and the offsets of the 50 feet that are not in compliance, or the 100 feet to the neighbor's house. So, and the variances are listed on the site plan. The application stable permit that was submitted, I think you have a copy, and I think it was in a copy of the last week's previous packet. It does say how will manure be stored, and they just wrote trailer. It's not descriptive of how they're going to handle the manure. It just says trailer, disposal, to dump, frequency 2 to 3 days, average. So there's no written description that could be further detailed that might be helpful for the board. I did mention that to Ms. Gabbett, that they might want to have a little bit more detail with their application, and she had informed me that the application in her mind was complete. So you have it was filled out. Whether that's sufficient, that's up to the board to determine. The type of fencing, it was noted as a wood split rail fence. So these are the questions that the board would have to be determined if it's complete.
I'm here if you'd like to ask the question.
Okay, so the details, yes, you're right, would have been helpful, but they did answer the questions on the application.
Correct.
Right, okay. So it would be helpful, I think, for the people living at 414 would come forward and just introduce yourselves and present your plans and perhaps answer to the public here. They have a lot of questions. And if it's helpful, we could work our way down, where I can, the questions that have been put forth by the public, so you can address them. But why don't you start?
I'd like to thank the board for having us again.
Just introduce yourselves individually.
I'm Jennifer Garbett, homeowner.
Jocelyn Erdley.
Jared Erdley.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I could start with the first town hearing, and we've already addressed that, so that should be in the past. We answered those questions back then. We did go to Superior Court, and we did remove the horses on September 17th. It was difficult for me to find a place to board the horses, as there's a lot of stables that are full. We have cleaned up the manure. We didn't understand the process on how all this works. This is the first time we've had horses on the property. It's been a dream of mine since I was 14. And we might have approached it wrong, but we've corrected everything and learned a lot along the way. I feel that, unfortunately, in this circumstance, that this is not a pet problem, that it's a personal problem, and that the neighbors just really don't like us. And the one way to punish us is to keep fighting against having horses on the property. We have 1.3 acres. We called and we asked the town prior to even putting an offer in on the house if we had enough land for 2 horses, and they confirmed and said yes, 1.3 was more than enough. We've hired a surveyor so that they could come in, because we did not know that piece, and that was not something that Bruce had discussed with us in the first year or the second year. We had the horses on the property for almost 3 years, and it was heartbreaking to have to remove them, despite how the neighbors feel. There is no odor, there are no flies. There are other neighbors that appreciate the horses in there. They have pulled in the driveway, they have walked down the driveway. That, to me, it's taking my word for it, just like somebody writing a letter and somebody else reading it, whether or not it's valid or not. If it's that true person's, they'd be here. My goal is to get the horses home. There are pets. If there was a regulation that if you didn't pick up your dog poop, you'd lose your dog, there'd be a lot of people in this room crying. I just want to bring my retired 23-year-old thoroughbred that I've owned for 14 years and that I've boarded out to be home on a winter storm so that I know he's safe and that he's eating and that he's cared for. And I want my daughter to have the same thing I had when I was a child. We bought her a horse so that she could be an equestrian and she could learn and she could be a trainer and she could have her dreams. And it's like bee stings being around these people. We've improved the home that we bought. It was a dilapidated, overgrown, in desperate need of help home. Yeah, they loved it because the man who lived in it didn't come out of it. He couldn't maintain it. There was rotted fences and overgrown ivy and dead trees. And we've done nothing. Yes, we brought in machines that made noise, but they made an improvement. That's what people do. Did I need a permit for it? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that whatever it is that we've done wrong, we're trying to do right. And we've coming up against roadblock after roadblock. And yes, we endured this. We paid all this money out for the surveyor, and we should just suck that up because that's the way they feel about us. It's tough to live around a bunch of people who sting you like a bee all the time, bitching and complaining. You know, I have one neighbor in particular who has fencing and a compost bucket on my property. And I've asked her to remove it, and it hasn't been moved. And I leave it there because I'm not going to fight with her about her illegal fencing on so she can keep her dog in her yard. I'm not here to rock anybody's boat. I'm trying to live in my little piece of pie, my piece of paradise. I'm not fighting with my neighbors. I don't pick on my neighbors. I don't call on my neighbors. But they constantly do it to us. It's like harassment. It has been for the almost 3 years that we've been there. And we're enduring it. But we're still doing, and we're not peeking in their backyards, and we're not making their lives miserable. We're trying to improve the home. And it was built in the 1800s. And it was farm long before they came along. It was a pig farm. There was cobblers, there was fishermen, there was all down 6A. There wasn't a bunch of snobs. There was hardworking people, and we're hardworking people. We deserve to have the horses back on our property. We didn't disrespect anybody on purpose. We didn't disrespect any of you on the board. We're trying to understand this. This is all new to us, and we apologize for anybody we've offended. but please grant us the permission to have the horses back on the property. It's where they belong. And to hell with them.
Well, just to be clear, what our responsibility is as a board is to see that regulations are met. And I don't mean just stables, I mean.
Yep, I understand
everything.
that.
That's
And
our
I know of some
responsibility.
stables like 307 North Main Street in South Yarmouth.
Don't worry about it.
There's a stable there, and I know there's variances for it. I've been to the stable. I know of other stables in Yarmouth that have variances. Variances are given out every day. Just because
Okay.
my neighbor says I shouldn't have one doesn't mean I can't.
Okay, just each property is different, and we address them
Okay?
individually. Usually it's septic systems, and we're looking at also the same way, just individual properties. Anyone else have any comments? Just to make something clear, Bruce, and that's about the variances, I guess. Just so everyone's clear, the only way this application can be passed is if those 6 variances are met. Is that correct?
Correct, or the board gives a approval to the variances.
Right.
Correct.
So without the approval tonight, then there will be no license, essentially.
Correct.
All right. The issue is, can this property be used without the variances to maintain 2 horses? With whatever changes would have to be made, is that possible or not?
It's possible. I believe it may be possible. They would probably have to relocate the stable stalls so they're outside the 50-foot setback and the 100-foot setback, but there is a possible area where that could be done. Currently, the stalls are in the barn area.
Okay, board members, how do you want to proceed with this? There's a lot of information, and people feel obviously very strongly about the issues, and I understand that. The question is, as a board, how do you want to proceed in just organizing this so we all understand and can vote on the variances tonight?
You want to read the variances, Mr. Chairman?
I can start with that, for sure. Hopefully it's meaningful for those at home who are just listening. There are 2 variances of the 6 that are relevant to the property of 414, where the horses would or possibly reside. The other 4 are related to a neighboring property, and that's 418 Route 6A. So 2 of the variances are for issues on the property, and 4 are for one of the neighboring properties. Is that correct, Bruce? Correct. Okay, anyone from the board want to, I mean, I've been really.
Yes, I would like to make the comment. I had to look up some terms to be sure I was clear, because I wasn't after reading the regulations. But stalls are an enclosure within a stable. And the stable is not identified as such on this survey. The variances that are requested are shown to the stalls, but our regulation talks about the distances from the stable. So I question whether that is correct. I don't understand why it is just to the stalls. Stalls are simply an enclosure within the building housing the horses, and the building is, if it's a horse building barn, it's a stable. So I don't think that those variances are correctly requested. That's one thing. The other thing that troubled me, I realized that 21 Center Street wasn't correct. So I don't know if, what other variances might be needed. And there isn't any mention of wetlands. I don't know if there are any wetlands around there, but our regulations do ask that any wetlands be considered. So I don't know if the surveyors did that or not. If that was something that they said, no, there's no wetlands here, we know that, or if it just wasn't addressed.
No, when I spoke with the surveyor when he was on our property, there is no wetlands on our property.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay,
And the back paddock that is used just strictly for Jocelyn's safety and riding meets all of the 50 feet requirements with no variances. It's set back from the property line, the way it's drawn out by the surveyor.
The way that he set
Ours
it
is
out
the dotted one.
perfectly.
The dark one is 50 feet on all ends and no variant to any of the abutting neighbors.
but that's the paddock, not the stable.
Well, no,
And
that, in the back, it's just a riding arena. It's not.
Right, understand. Yep, I understand. But I'm saying that the variances that you're showing requested are from the property lines and from the house at 418 and your own house to the stalls, not to the stable. Ostensibly, it's going to be the same from your house to the stable, but not so for the property on 418.
Well, the stalls,
That was the biggest conclusion
Yeah.
when we were
Yeah.
dealing with all this before. It was the setback from her corner of her house to the physically where the stall
where
was.
the horse would be, and
So those were the few that we spoke about, Bruce, when we were.
well, we purchased the property with the stable, the barn,
Already
garage.
existing.
It was pre-existing and it's non-conforming. It's cemented right where it is, so.
Move it.
Bruce, I need some help here.
Yes, the,
Stable versus stall here.
Yes, the regulation you have does not have a definition of stall, but it has a definition of stable. And the definition of stable is any lot, structure, enclosure where a farm animal are kept or maintained. So what we've looked at is the past is usually that is the area within the barn, the stall, not the four corners of the outside of the barn. It would just be the interior stick corral area or stall area.
I think we need to have stall defined in the regulation.
Yeah, it doesn't mention stalls. All the regulation is, as you know, just mentions stables, corrals, or paddocks.
Right.
And so when we've looked at the regulations in the past with other properties, usually that stable would be where the horse is kept inside the barn. And I think that's the measurements that are being shown on the plan today.
Correct.
Mary?
Because that's where the animals are kept and maintained within the stable in the stall.
Someone do me a favor, maybe they can read the requested variances. That could be on the list, I guess, that Bruce wrote, or it could be the variances that are on the survey. Make any difference, Bruce?
No.
I'll read it.
I broke it out just a little bit further, but either
I'm
will
just
be
going to read.
fine.
I'm going to read off of here. So at this time, the board will we're going to so there's 6. Number 1, to allow the horse stalls to be 82.6 inches, 82.6 feet from a dwelling located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet. Number 2, to allow the horse stalls to be 86.5 feet from owner dwelling located at 414 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet. Number 3, to allow the existing horse stalls to be 29.5 feet from a property line located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 50 feet. Number 4, to allow the relocated horse paddock to be 80 feet from owner dwelling located at 414 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet. Number 5, to allow the relocated horse paddock to be 89.4 feet from a dwelling located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet. Number 6, to allow the relocated horse paddock to be 40 feet from a property line located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 50 feet. It is noted that the existing rear corral will be relocated to 50 feet from all property lines, so no relief is requested there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
I had a question about the manure piece. You said it, for some reason, I don't have that in my packet.
This?
Yeah.
I didn't either.
Oh,
Here.
okay. Sorry about that. So when it says type of facility used for manure storage, trailer, and when I look at our regulations about the manure piece, it says that the manure storage has to be in a ventilated, watertight storage facility constructed of concrete or other durable material that shall be provided for the storage of manure so located as to promote regular removal of manure from inside the stable. Manure shall be placed in the manure storage container. So how I'm reading that, it has to be constructed of concrete or other durable material. I'm not sure what that looks like. And it has to be removed every 48 hours, no more than every 48 hours. And what did it say on the application? Every 2 to 3 days. So it has to be every 2 days.
Absolutely.
All manure from the stable and corral area shall be removed weekly from the property. Small amounts of compost may be allowed on the property if maintained and free of odors and insects. So that was my
Okay.
thing about that.
Okay.
So where is the manure trailer? Doesn't show it on the site plan
Well,
here.
the manure will be.
Excuse me,
removed-
you may have to
excuse
sit a
me,
little closer
sorry.
to the mic.
The
Thank you.
manure will be
Mic to you.
removed.
Just pull the mic in. There you go.
So the manure will be removed no more than every 2 days in watertight containers. We were removing it once a day when we were going through all this with the courts. And, whatever it takes to make sure everybody's happy, I will do so.
Where is the trailer located?
It can be located anywhere.
It's
Wherever you
just a
want.
small trailer, ma'am, that's in the
You put the barrels
driveway. I will
The
put
driveway.
the manure in landscape barrels and cover it appropriately, watertight.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess I need comments probably from the health department as well as the people seeking the variances on several questions that are brought forth here in a letter that we've received. And first has to do with, for instance, the wetlands setback not indicated. Are there wetlands or not?
I've walked the property several times and have not seen any wetlands. It's pretty thick down in a couple of the back areas there, but in general, from around the house, up back to the right, I haven't seen any wetlands.
Okay, and how does that relate to the fact there's pooling of water there that was brought to our attention tonight?
Well, I think the
May I
the pooling of water is because of the way it's sloped. It slopes down into a low spot in that corral, but I think it's also the soil conditions. It's kind of like a hard clayish, so it doesn't drain right out, which is kind of the standard soils on 6A. It's kind of like a clay hard pan. Some other areas that we have horse stables in town, it's more of a gravel that drains out. This just kind of sit right in that area of the corral paddock. The regulations do mention that it has to be gently sloping, and they recommend area drains when possible.
So those don't exist at this time.
Correct.
They'd be needed. It looks, from the pictures, it looks that way, to me at least.
Go ahead.
May I speak? So
Sure.
the time that picture was taken, there was it was frozen for about 3 weeks. Okay, so we had a good like 5 inches of frost. So the water couldn't drain appropriately. In the future,
Excuse me, we can't have a conversation back and forth here. Once again, we can take welcome comments and all, but only one person can be speaking at a time, and it's certainly, no one's going to hear if someone's not on a mic, just to let everyone know. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no, that's okay. Moving forward, it would be probably appropriate to, get some, proper drainage, some, maybe in the future, to get that to drain better, because there's clay, just to get,
The water does drain pretty
it does
quickly.
drain, it's just, it takes a little bit.
Uh,
At the time of that picture was taken, it was frozen, and then it rained. So there's no way for the water to go.
Okay, I mean, if the water's there, it's there. In the regulations here, on page 2, unsanitary conditions, okay, it's the third item down, if everyone is opening that up. Under unsanitary conditions, a state of being of a facility which, in the opinion of the Board of Health, is conducive to or results in breeding of flies, creation of offensive odors, rodent infestation, liquid effluent, or runoff. So effluent is liquid waste. So my concern is that liquid waste that's sitting there.
It's rain.
Rain.
It's rainwater that runs down from 6A, the driveway, into the paddock. We have a pump that pumps it out.
So that runoff is not coming from where the animals are.
It's not a giant puddle of urine, it's
from the
rainwater
road.
and wash off from the street that comes down the driveway. Our driveway goes down into a slope to where the garage is.
We've all been there, we're familiar.
Yeah, even if we run the hose and wash the boat and the cars, you create a
It's
puddle,
yeah, it's
but
gonna go right
it goes
in.
away.
The issue is if the water's around where the horses are, that's all I'm looking at the regulations concerned would be
Yeah.
liquid waste, nothing to do with washing a boat.
Well, no, but
Just keep it
the
simple.
puddle they're referring to is from rainwater. It's not because they're standing in their own urine.
I don't know the property well enough to know that. Bruce, Jay, is there concern about liquid waste?
I don't know that we can accurately determine if there's liquid waste. I think what Bruce said, he depicted properly. There's a grading issue here, and probably from 6A as well. But it would have to be probably graded so that it comes further grading inside that paddock area so that water runs out of where the horses are being kept. The constitution of the liquid, I don't know, makeup, urine, is it runoff? I don't know. I have seen standing water there.
In this area where you see most of the low area, where you see most of the area right in the front, that's probably going to be, that doesn't meet the 50-foot setback, so I think that will be out of the new 50-foot area when they have to relocate that lower corral. Not all of it, but depending, some of it will be out of that area. Whether that still is sloped off and will be water there, that's a possibility too, and that's why some drains may be needed.
The location of the septic system, location?
It's
is that
not required to be shown on the plan.
Not required, okay. I'm just going down the list here, everyone, that's all I'm doing. It's mentioned here about the feed and hay storage areas in barn not indicated. Is that necessary or not?
We have not required that in the past. I mean, we just basically look at where the stable corral is within the barn. We don't require that to be shown.
You're welcome to speak up at any time here.
I guess the only thing I wanted to say was that as part of the application, they do ask the abutters, the people surrounding the property, their thoughts. And I think as part of that, part of this process, we need to take that into consideration as well.
Didn't they already get their thoughts?
Yeah, I'm saying we need to take them into consideration. It's not just about the permit.
Just waiting for more comments from the board.
Ready to vote?
The floors in the horse stalls, how are they?
Dry.
Construction of the hot stalls
Rubber mats,
Rubber floor mats,
on top of,
cement.
cement. That's usually the way it goes.
And
with-
shavings and woody pellets on top.
For comfort.
And are they sloped to provide drainage?
Yes.
I have not seen any drainage issues within the stall areas. As they mentioned, it's concrete floor with rubber matting on top, shavings, and they've always been clean every time I've been there.
How does the board feel about the comment that was made tonight about the safety of the horses, dealing with the fence, exercise, and so on?
My feeling was, from what I heard, it was just simply based on observations. He never actually went on the property, saw the horses, saw the conditions of the horses, so.
I just meant structurally, that's all. I
Oh.
mean, just,
I mean, I don't know that much about horses breaking out of
But they
fences, so I can't
structurally
speak to
doesn't
that.
provide for exercise, for running, certainly doesn't provide for running. I mean, a paddock doesn't provide for the horses to run. So I wondered how the horses got their exercise and how they did get out to pasture.
maybe you could answer that. And the horses were there for over 2 years, I guess. So how were they exercised?
Back on the plan, there's.
Why don't you just bring the mic to you so everyone can hear you? Thank you.
In the back corner of the plan, there's a giant box. That's where most of the exercise is taking place. You can see the old one that used to be there existing that wasn't so much functional, but as soon as we upgrade, it will be more functional as soon as we do the requirements.
They want to know how they're exercising, that's all.
It's just riding. I do liberty work with them. I don't know if any of you guys know about that. But it's holistic and horsemanship. I don't usually take them off property to do any riding because I feel that it is unsafe. I like to be in a enclosed area of the 50 feet radius. If it's not enough room, I mean,
It's plenty of room.
Plenty of room. 100 by,
And even when you're at a boarding stable, there isn't grazing fields. Where I am now, there is not a grazing field for a horse to go out and munch on grass. It's all dirt. It's metal fencing. It's, it's what horse people provide for their horses. The fencing is the fencing. They're not going through it. They've never been loose in 3 years. They get ample hay. They're fed on a regular basis. Horses have a natural acid that builds up in their gut. So if you don't provide them with hay, they end up with ulcers, and then they end up with trouble. I've had horses since I was 14. And we take well care of our horses, and they're not in any distress.
if they were, you would know.
I can just say the neighbors have been very patient, incredibly patient. It's gone on a long, long time. Obviously, living nearby, people are very invested where they live, quality of life. So I just want to comment how patient people have been. As for the board, decision about, I guess, the variances, the thing to think about is how's that going to affect neighbors? And the other would be if they were declined, what would happen next? In other words, whether or not people would apply again, meet regulations, would be, I guess, one possibility that would occur. Bruce, one question I had on your letter from December 28th. After the variances are listed, it said, it is noted that the existing rear corral will be relocated to be 50 feet from all property lines, so no relief is requested. Maybe you just comment on that. Have we learned anything tonight that influences or would affect that, assuming it's going to take place?
The large corral in back that they just mentioned is the heavy dock line. So they're kind of shifting it back, and that does meet 50 feet back in from all locations. And it's approximately 112 by 64 wide. We did not pick up if there's a house within 100 feet. The surveyor didn't pick that up. I know that was a question that was brought up earlier. Was that house closer? I don't know. The surveyor didn't pick anything up. Would have to do further looking, but.
You're saying a house where we don't know, it's 100 from where to where?
Elmcroft.
Elmcroft?
They said there was one that was closer. I think that was the one at
Elmcroft?
15.
15 Elmcroft. The requirement for you is 100 feet from the stable, not from fencing, not from, it's not a paddock or a corral. It's 50 feet from the property lines. It's 100 feet from where they live, where they reside, where their stalls are. So there's not a question on Elmcroft.
The corral would still have to be 100 feet from a neighbor's house. 50 feet from a property line, 100 feet from a neighbor's house.
But there's no stall in that.
Pardon?
There's no stall or barn out there.
They don't stay out there. That's just for riding and exercise.
Why would it
Right.
have to be
Because
100 feet from that house?
That's what the regulations say.
Could you read that for us? Where is that, Bruce? That's important.
I can just
Under-
take it all down, if that's.
Once again, you're going to have to bring the mic to you, otherwise the public cannot hear you.
Don't. I read the
You're-
regulation. I read the regulation in the literature. It says that the stable has to be 100 feet from a dwelling.
Let me just go back. Let me look.
The fencing has to be 50 feet from a property line. It's fencing, it's not the stable.
So I'm really bothered by the fact that this is the only town where there's so many problems with trying to meet, and who's the person who made up these laws is, I
Okay,
want to know.
okay. These are the regulations that are currently in
like to know
place.
who made the regulations,
I'm
sir.
speaking, okay? These are just regulations we're trying to follow. It's our responsibility. Our town may be very different than other towns. I have no
Yes.
idea the regulations in other towns.
Uh-huh.
But we're investing a lot of effort and time just to meet the town regulations. That's all we're attempting to
And
do.
don't you live on Elmcroft, sir?
I'm over in Center Street.
Okay,
right
Center
there.
Street, which is Elmcroft, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The regulations were adopted by the Board of Health in 2007. They were amended in 2007. Each town has their own.
All right.
I would just say that we have about 2 minutes to go on the hearing before the next meeting is coming in. So a couple options is to make a motion tonight, or you'd have to continue the meeting.
Okay, I still want to settle this. The issue of
Stables in the 100 feet, if you went to page 2.
Right.
202-2, location requirements, stables, corrals, paddocks shall not be located less than 50 feet from any building or structure used for human habitation.
100 feet,
100
not less
feet.
than,
Correct.
yeah.
Corrals are 50 feet in, but then you also have to be 100 feet from a neighbor's house.
From the house, the structure that
Correct.
that exists on
Correct.
15 Elmcroft. So we don't know where that is on
Correct.
this.
They're saying it's, they're saying it's closer. The surveyor didn't pick it up. I don't know. We'd have to do further looking.
So we have the property line here, we don't have the location of the structure then, correct?
Correct.
Okay, fine.
Stable would have to be 100 feet
In
from
corral,
from
corral,
15? The
right.
Corral?
corral.
But you said the corral has to be 50 feet from a
50
property.
feet in from the property line.
Right.
Which you do have here.
Right.
And 100 feet from a house. And that's the back one in the corner that, up in this area here, that we don't know where that person is. It looks closer on the assessor's map. Whether that's to scale, we don't know. It was not shown.
Okay, all right. As I said,
We need to wrap
you
it
have
up.
30 seconds,
Yep,
okay? That's it.
The reason you don't have it is because the property is mislabeled on the plan. It gives the wrong address. And according to the town's records, I have a plot plan for the 15 Elmcroft. It shows it is only 22 feet from their rear property line.
Okay.
Happy to supply that to you.
If you could provide that just for information
Is that
for
in the
now.
packet? If it,
No, this is new information.
yeah, I didn't see that. Okay, all right. Board members, unfortunately, I mean, at times we're here until 9 o'clock, but we don't have that option tonight.
Right, it
There's a
does show,
meeting-
yeah.
There's a meeting coming here. What do you want to do? I've got 2 minutes after this to finish the agenda, so anyone want to make a motion here, please?
I motion,
Oh,
I was
think-
going to, go ahead, Charlie, you
Charlie.
you can go.
I make a motion to grant the allowance of the horse stalls, 82.6 from the dwelling on 418 Route 6A. Grant the allowance of the horse stall to be 86.5 from the owner dwelling located at 414 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet, to allow the existing horse stall to be 29.5 from the property line located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 50 feet, and to allow the relocation of horse paddock to be 80 feet from the owner's dwelling located at 414 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet, to allow the relocation horse paddock to be 89.4 from the dwelling located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 100 feet, and to allow the relocation of the horse paddock to be 40 feet from the property line located at 418 Route 6A in lieu of 50 feet.
Okay, thank you. So we need a second to the motion. That just would allow a discussion and then a vote. It doesn't mean which way you're going to vote on it, so we need a second to the motion, just so we can move forward. Once again, that doesn't mean which way you're going to vote.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
The only thing I want to say is discussion, the floor plan, the certified plot plan from the house on Imcroft Road does show it 22 feet off the property line, so that could put it within 100 feet. That's the new information that just came in. So
that's
that
an
would be
additional-
just, that would just be
the-
another variance that may be needed,
Yeah, an additional variance that would be
an
required.
additional variance, if needed.
We do this pretty loosely. You want to add that to the variances? That's okay with me.
Yeah.
To cut to the chase here.
The variance too.
Fine. Okay, Mary, you still second the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion about that? Seeing there are none. Okay, so let's vote. All in favor of the motion, just raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's one vote. Anyone for nay? Nay.
Nay.
It's three. So motion is turned down, declined. Okay, so the variances are not granted. That's the final vote tonight. All right? That's it on that. Okay, we're going to move along in the agenda.
I would say we're probably, the other items on the agenda could be continued to the next meeting.
Board okay with that?
Yes.
Informally? Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine with me. You got people, I'm sure, we're over. Okay, so, we need a motion to adjourn, though.
I move
So
we
moved.
adjourn.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Fine. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your efforts, everyone.